of the camera, and welcome back to our Digital Youth Work State of Play event after lunch. Hoping you had a nice meal. My co-host isn't having a nap, but actually preparing for the next step, and I'm just standing here to make a joke in the beginning before I pass it to the next session. I don't have a joke at the moment, so I'll just say that we'll be diving into the being online, hybrid and blended. So it's all about how the European Union programs are adapting to digital transformation, and especially now in the past few years during the COVID time. So, Snezana on my right, can you hear me? Snezana?
Hear you indeed.
Serbia, how many points?
I hope 12 after today. Okay, so welcome from the right side. I haven't been here so far, but it looks quite cozy. And as you can see, I have replaced Antti with Pannu. So Pannu is joining me here in presence, and we also have 3 people waiting to join us online. And we will tell you in a second why they are waiting and what they are joining for. So as Antti already announced, this afternoon session is about Work Package 5. We do use the language of work packages that we know that mean something to some people and maybe not so much to the others, but they mean in the context of this long-term activity. But for those to whom work package doesn't mean much, hopefully the title of it would, which is about online, blended and hybrid learning mobilities, about their quality, how to ensure the quality of these mobilities. And part of the outputs for this work package was also going towards the European Commission. So how to ensure that we maintain the quality of activities, how to make them inclusive, which tools to use, etc., etc. But without further ado, I think it's my conversation partners will explain it much better than myself. So right next to me, I have Pannu Rassanen, who is a youth worker, and he will be addressing us from this perspective. We have Adina Sherban, who is joining online, who is a researcher, among many, many other things. We have Kadri Maripu, who is the project officer in Salto Participation and Information. And we have Babis Papaioannou, I hope I'm saying this well, from the European Commission. So now we are going to wait for them to magically appear on our screen, and hopefully to all of us, for all of you watching us on YouTube, so they actually appear, we all appear together. Oh yes, we see you, wonderful. Hello. Can we make sure that we also hear you? It's fantastic.
Hello.
Wonderful. Hi, and thank you for joining us. And actually, before we dive in, and we have many questions, as you know, and many topics to discuss, maybe you tell us really briefly about yourself and your connection to digital youth work. So maybe we start with Babis first, and then we will make a round.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Babis Papaioannou, and you said it very correct. So I'm working for the European Commission. I'm in the DG EAC, the youth unit, and one of the policy officers that are following the topic of youth work, and especially digital youth work. So this is more or less my connection. Of course, as a European Commission, you know that we are updating the whole packet, but we will tell all these stories later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babis. And you also actually have a long history in youth work, which I'm sure that it will kind of come through your answer. So no need to be modest there. But thank you at least for this brief introduction to start with. And maybe we continue with Kadri. Kadri, maybe you also tell us a little bit about yourself. Is it just me, or we cannot really hear Kadri? Just a second, Kadri. No? Okay. No, so maybe while our, how we call him now here, Techno Antti is working on the sound, maybe we hear from Adina, and then we come back to you, circle back to you, Kadri. Adina? Hello and welcome.
Good afternoon. And yeah, I hope my microphone is working. It still is after 2 years. I'm still asking if the microphone is working, which is good. Well, yeah, as Nejan was saying, I'll probably share a bit on my experience on researching upon digital youth work, limits of digital youth work, and then access and social inclusion related to digital youth work. But in the same time, I have other hats I'm wearing back home as well, because I'm still a grassroots youth worker, working with young people in the rural areas in a youth organization that struggled to survive while trying to make its activities online. And I've been also involved a bit with policy making. 2 years ago, working for the Ministry on Youth and Sport, and together with the Romanian National Agency, struggling a bit to set up a digital youth workers community back here in Romania. And luckily, the community is still very active. So, really happy to be part of the panel and looking forward for the great discussion of this afternoon.
Thank you, Adina. We are very happy to have you. Maybe we go back to Panu and then we check and hopefully Kadri will be able to be heard as well.
Yeah, I'm Panu Rasanen and I come from Jyväskylä. And in Jyväskylä I have been working for around 14 years now in the field of youth work. And somehow my work has always been related to digital youth work. I run a small NGO back in the day, which provided different sorts of media training for children, and I worked in project which tried to contact youngsters with problematic gaming. And last 2 years I have been coordinator of digital youth work for the city of Jyväskylä. And now, on January, I started working on Berge, which is a center of expertise on digital youth work here in Finland.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Panu. Kadri? Can we? No? No. Techno Antti, can we hear Kadri?
No.
No.
Microphone is muted.
Okay. Kadri, can you make sure that your microphone is not muted? I'm sure you checked that already, but we're still obliged to say it. No, it's not. Okay. So then our proposal is actually, because the first question is basically general for all of you. So maybe we start with that question, and then while the others are answering, we make sure that we can hear you, and then you can actually then introduce yourself before answering to that first question. All right? Good. So basically, the first question that we prepared, and then we also have some very specific questions, because as you can see, we have really this golden triangle plus, which means that we have practitioners among, like in this panel, and researchers, and then policymakers, and also Salto staff. Is somehow the COVID times have brought, and this is not news to any of us, have brought a lot of online activities, also blended and hybrid. But what was quite new was that there were some that were purely online. Yeah. Now that we are somehow slowly exiting COVID, if I might say that, I'm still keeping my fingers crossed. The big question is, what is the future of these online activities? There is a lot of learning, there was a lot of development, so what is the future there? Yeah. So then that's my question to you. What do you think it's the future, and especially in the EU youth programs? Yeah. So what is their role? What is their future there? Yeah. So Kadri, maybe we try now, because I was informed that maybe you can go. We try?
All right, let's try. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Perfect.
Oh, very good. Good to be here, and hello to everyone. The future of online activities in the youth programs. I will then jump there directly. And what I see right now with working, let's say we have explored digital transformation now for 1.5 years, is that digital or online opportunities, when used in a meaningful way, which means that when and where they support the learning process, they are creating more flexibility in overall understanding or the ways that we can use youth work and how we can communicate with each other. So this flexibility can be also seen in, for example, mindset change, that people need to be maybe a bit more creative in looking into the tools and methodologies and how to use and where and when to use the online activities. And I also see that in the future, probably there is more strategic approach needed when planning the activities from the start. So when and where actually digital enhances the inclusion. For example, participants don't need to travel, or they can join when they are working, maybe in the evening or in the morning. And there are also much more offers available to learn. And also the cost of organizing events in some ways goes down. But of course, there are other costs that are coming up. So I think this is one important thing even when starting a project to think about it strategically. Sustainability aspect definitely is something that is relevant and should be considered, and there's much more possibilities for long-term impact. For example, when you have a residential activities, you can always combine it with some online mentorship and other options. So I see overall there is a need for more flexibility in understanding how the learning process can be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kadri. We're so happy that we can hear you, and then there is a lot already coming from you. So we are really glad that you could join us. And then how about the others? What is your take on what is the future of the online activities in the EU youth programs? Maybe we jump to Babis. So maybe I name you so we don't have these awkward silences in between.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Yeah, really interesting question. I mean, I must say from the very beginning that we have, at the level of the European Union, we have two documents that guide us on this exercise. And practically, I don't know if there is any noise to you, but someone is calling from the office. Okay, so we have two interesting documents. It's the Council resolution on smart youth work, and we have also the Council resolution on digital youth work. And these are, let's say, our guiding theoretical framework for how to build and how to support the development of digital youth work. Of course, as you say, from the beginning, at the time of the pandemic, we had the booming of digital youth work and the digital, let's say, transformation of projects. And I believe that for the next period, there is a need of an extended dialogue, and we already start this dialogue in cooperation with the national agencies, the Salto resource centers, and other stakeholders about the new characteristics of digital youth work in the recovery period. Also, more specific, the connection of the youth work with the new technologies and the new developments on technology, and especially with the artificial intelligence. And I must say that there are also two other things that we were happy at the time of the pandemic, that digital youth work and digital applications encouraged more. So it was mainly the involvement of more young people outside the European youth policy bubble, more young people, and especially young people from rural and remote areas, that they had the opportunity to connect and to participate. And I believe that this can be one of the priorities for the next period. And I must say at the very end of this question that for the next period, we need to focus more on development of local youth work and how we can encourage municipalities and local stakeholders, local youth NGOs to participate, because the starting mechanism, the core of what we call youth work and digital youth work is still actions and projects taking place in local place. So we need to emphasize and to give them more space.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Babis. Maybe we bring the voices back here to the studio. So Panu, what is your take on this question?
those programs definitely should continue because the youngsters' lives have completely changed during these past 3 years, and more the education systems are done through these same platforms as done past 3 years. So basically, they have done this change, and there's no going back. And these platforms and this kind of way of working is part of everybody's life nowadays. I work from Jyväskylä, but my office is actually in Helsinki, 300 kilometers away. So this is my daily life also. And in a sense, if you think about 3 years period on a life of a teenager who is 15 years old, it's huge part. It's basically 20% of his or her life. So it's really important that we don't go back to normal, because for these youngsters there's no normal about it, because it's part of their life. We don't have to want it or hope it, but it's part of the daily life. And this gives lots of possibilities to do different sorts of youth work inside different municipalities or organizations and the youth services of the city, and also possibilities to do youth work between different countries or organizations in different countries. And if you do this youth work properly and have a good result, there's possibility that this youth work goes viral, so it has more effect to the youngsters' life.
Thank you very much, Panu. And then Adina, I don't know if it's from the research perspective, but let's say from your perspective, what is the future of the mobilities in the EU program?
Well, it's from the research perspective, because the project that I've been working on, like for the last part of the last year, it was with Nisha, that we all probably know, and we've been looking at the limits of digital youth work, because it's wonderful. We've been speaking a lot of opportunities and things that happen, but it's probably the time when we sit down and we have a look at what happened, in fact, because all of a sudden, due to the pandemic, everyone seemed to, like the ones who had access to tools and could somehow find a way to do some digital youth work, and things happened because that was the context. But it's probably the moment when we should be looking at what happened in reality, when we should admit that there were pitfalls and that there were challenges and opportunities, and to look at all these. Because as I was saying, we looked at the limits, and it came a lot with limits, and it opened the access to some groups of young people, but in other cases it just closed the access to other groups of young people, speaking at least of groups of young people with fewer opportunities. So in terms of future, it's probably the moment when we should be looking with a fair perspective at what happened, so to understand what happened, and also to see the stakeholders coming together and have a look at all these digital youth work practices. Because it's also a matter of trust, when probably authorities should trust youth workers more, and also the youth workers, because anyway, the ones who were providing face-to-face quality activities, they did the same in digital environments, and the ones who just did it because they had to do, because otherwise the grant was cut off, they just did it, no matter what the context was or the needs of young people would be. So it's probably the moment when researchers should really look at practices, at tools, instruments, of course, on a fair dialogue with authorities and also with youth workers.
Thank you, Adina. Thank you so much also for bringing young people with fewer opportunities and also inclusion dimension into the conversation. We come back to it later, but it's really essential when talking about, I wanted to say digital youth work, but actually what we learned in the past 2 days from many different activities is that digital youth work is part of youth work. So we need to see it also in that sense and look at the inclusion dimension overall, let's say. But what I get from all four of you, not that we are surprised, because I guess you're also part of this panel because you believe in online learning mobility and digital youth work, is that now we actually have specific questions for each of you in a way, okay, if they are there to stay and should be supported, what is the support there? Yeah. And then the first question, of course, goes to the European Commission. And Babis, you have a weight of the institution now on your shoulders. But what is somehow the position of the European Commission in the sense, is there a way to recognize this online learning mobility as activities in the program? And if so, are there instruments somehow to also enhance their implementation, maybe some specific elements there, and maybe even a name? Yeah, because we are juggling a lot with the online, with the virtual mobility, with virtual exchange and so on. So are there any concrete steps already from the Commission in this domain?
Yeah, thank you very much. I must say from the very beginning that yes, the dialogue is there, and also what we are doing now is part of this debate on the future of digital youth work and digital exchanges and the digital transformation of the EU programs. But I must say from the very beginning that based on today's conditions and based on what the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps describe, virtual activities can only be complementary to physical. So, and this and that physical activities and mobilities are the principal elements of the program. So the programs are focusing, supporting, and continues to have at the core the physical mobility of the young people around Europe. Yes, during the time of the pandemic, we have this technical transformation into the digital format. There are a lot of open topics. There are a lot of things that we need to solve. There are a lot of details and who is doing digital youth work and a lot of points. And we are discussing this with our colleagues at the national agencies, the Salto centers, the European Youth Forum, and other platforms that they have an opinion and they are working on the topic. But I can say that of course we cannot return back. We cannot return back in the previous period before the COVID and pretending that nothing happens and the technology is not moving forward and all that things. But we need to discuss very serious, and for the moment I have the feeling that there are no concrete proposals even coming from the people who are working on the field. So European Commission is positive, and we are collecting a lot of information and a lot of proposals. But practically the debate will start at the end of this year or next year. Based also on the implementation, because we are starting the implementation phase of the European Youth Work Agenda. Part of the European Youth Work Agenda is to explore the digital tools and the digital dimension of youth work. So yes, I believe next year we're going to be more easy and more let's say, with more information about what are the needs of the young people on these new digital formats, but also what the people who are working on the field can propose on this digital transformation of youth work and youth policies.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you also for a very honest answer, I think, there, because it's good to hear that there are intentions, but also know what is the state of play, as we like to use it here a lot, and what is available and what is not. And we look forward definitely for the end of the year or the beginning of the next year to look at the possible different formats without, as you were saying, Babis, without, of course, intending to replace the in-person or the physical activity. As we know, it's kind of the core of both of the programs. Thank you for that. Kadri, from the Salto's perspectives, because there are institutions that basically support the implementation of the program from the different perspectives. In your particular Salto is about participation and information, but there are others in the network as well. So what can be done in terms of supporting the implementation of online blended and hybrid mobility? before, but also after we have clear regulations from the side of the Commission?
First of all, there are 7 Saltos, Salto resource centers around Europe, and they are either regional or they are working on a specific topic. Often the topic can be a priority, or it can be, in any case, something that we need to look into. And Saltos provide non-formal learning tools, resources, trainings for national agencies, organizations, youth workers, young people, and each Salto is approaching it somewhat differently, but generally this digital is going, of course, as a priority through everyone's work. So, for example, then the focus will be more on digital when we talk about competencies, or in case of overall understanding. So what we try to do is simplify the concept and structure it, see how it is connected with our topics, what kind of support is needed by the stakeholders I mentioned. And for example, from Salto Participation and Information, we have done currently focusing more on the needs of national agencies on the topic of digital transformation, and trying to see their understanding and how they can actually support the youth workers and young people they are working with. So we've done focus group interviews and surveys and mapping of the existing projects in the EU projects results databases in order to give this context and look back a little bit in order to go further with these learning opportunities. And in some ways, what I also see that we do is we translate, let's say we have a more maybe complicated theoretical approach or a research or a strategy, and we try to translate it to more simplified and action-based language so anyone can use it. And also the new applicants can use the idea of digital, how it can be connected with their projects, or what they can, in a way, like receive from us better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kadri, and also invitation maybe for those for whom this is the first time that you are kind of meeting with Salto and the network, is that there are a lot of resources that are being produced to support the different aspects of work, but also the digital transformation and online, blended and hybrid. So watch the space, Google it, and then you will find a lot of materials that can also support, besides all the other things that have been mentioned. And now we jump to research. As we were saying, if the activities are here to stay, and we need to ensure their quality, because that's also what the programs are all about. It's not just, let's say, the number of projects being implemented, but also in the good quality. Adina, what is the role of research in that, to support the online blended and hybrid? Maybe you mentioned that a little bit in the previous answer, but what should the research, from your perspective, be focusing on?
Well, I would simply say to understand and to help people understand what's happening there. And for that, research also needs time and resources as well, and also good dialogue with the practitioners and with the policymakers. And when I'm saying that we should understand, there are still moments when we are struggling to understand exactly what concepts we use. If we use own concepts related to youth work and digital youth work, or we are somehow picking up some concepts and adapting them to the youth work landscape. Except for concepts, we also need to understand experiences, and probably when speaking of youth work and young people experiencing digital youth work, to maybe run interviews or to run focus groups to collect those experiences, to organize the information, and then to present it to the other stakeholders. Also to understand if we had any monitoring evaluation in that, and if we hadn't, it's probably the time that we develop those instruments for monitoring and evaluation, because in the end we should understand what we are doing there. Because as I was saying, for me it's also a matter of quality, and doing digital youth work, it's not only doing it, but also understanding what we do there. And I'm also coming from a country where if you are a youth worker or you do youth work, it does require additional explanation to explain people what we do. I'm Romanian, based in Romania. So it's a lot of countries where youth work is still struggling to have its own tradition. And speaking of digital youth work, that's like another hard thing to explain. So the European institutions should also probably be looking back to those traditions in youth work before deciding what's digital youth work. But yes, summarizing it, youth research should understand and should help people understand what's there with digital youth work and with the youth field at the moment.
Thank you. And I think that there really, you summarized it also yourself in the end, but I think two things to take from there mainly is the understanding, of course, of digital youth work, but as you were saying, it should be part anyway of youth work, but understanding the needs of young people there and not assuming maybe what they need for the digital transformation and so on, but really look into what they might need in this perspective. And then we mentioned different roles of stakeholders, but also then when it comes to practice, there's a lot of different roles there as well. Yeah, youth workers, trainers, facilitators, youth leaders, mentors, coaches, and the list goes on. So from your perspective, Panu, what do these different roles need in terms of support, to implement the quality activities online, hybrid, blended, maybe from national agencies, but also from research, from the institutions and so on?
Yeah, but, I think at the moment the most needed part is to give the youth workers on youth centers and who are working with youngsters more freedom to have their own smaller projects to approach the digitality. At the moment, when everything was turned to digital, it came from planners or executives or coordinators, and we forgot maybe somehow that our youth workers weren't ready to accept all the digitality or to make this huge leap. And therefore, I think that there should be more funding from maybe from the Commission or from SALTO or national agencies, smaller projects that comes to digitalization of the youth centers. So smaller steps and probably more funding for the equipment. So youngsters could introduce themselves with youth workers into this equipment and all the possibilities that digitalization will bring. So it would be more like project-based learning or phenomenal learning, which is supported by the researchers, that we can learn many more things when we are collecting bigger context in this groups, and probably it could be much cost efficient that we don't make huge projects to hire some people to do it. We just give them to some money to push them forward, and the aid would go straight to the youth centers. So baby steps, back to the baby steps, basically.
Thanks, Panu. And I think it's really interesting and maybe not surprising at the same time how it comes through different answers, that although we talk about EU-based programs where mobility is really an important aspect, somehow it does come down to the grassroots and municipal youth work, as Babis was also mentioning and others, and then you need to invest also from there, and then strengthen the capacities and competences and then go further on as well. On to the next question. I think we covered also quite a few aspects there, and then this question is also again for all four of you, which is that, for example, this morning we talked about capacities and competencies, and then there were a few insights that said, but also there are tools, and we should focus on both in a way. Sometimes maybe we go too far into tools, sometimes too far into thinking about the competencies, but tools are still needed, like in any other aspect of youth work. So when it comes to these potentially new tools that are emerging, so far we have been mostly using commercial tools that might not be compliant with the data protection and privacy and so on and so forth. Maybe some of the tools that we are even using during this event. But then if we want to have them compliant with the privacy and safety and so on, who should invest in that, and how can the youth field be involved in these processes? Yes, that we have tools and platforms that are actually fitting to the values and practices of youth work. So again, then maybe I called the names. So Adina, maybe you would like to reflect on this first.
Yes, and I'm happy that you mentioned investing in tools because, yeah, one thing that we should probably name it exactly is that you need money for that. So it's basically what you need to start with because, yeah, youth NGOs, and I've been involved with some research projects in the last years, will struggle, and the youth workers use their own computers and they work from home, with own paying internet from their own money, whatever. But and speaking of own tools and instruments, you cannot function like that. It's not sustainable. It's good, it's wonderful, it's marvelous that things are happening with and for young people, but when we do speak of own instruments, platforms, and tools, you need serious investment for that. Except for the tools and platforms, because that's for me like an open, do we really need own tools, instruments, platforms for digital youth work, or we are okay with using all these commercial ones? Yeah, then who has the ownership on that? Are we youth workers waiting for the national agencies to develop platforms or for the commission to develop tools and instruments and then we use them, or we are waiting for them to invest in the ones that the youth workers communities develop? So there's still the question of ownership and who should have an active role on that. The answer will probably be like both parts, but it's only a dialogue that we are always having, but haven't seen that many steps into that. And yeah, except for that, well, the Romanian National Agency did a wonderful thing, and they are working on establishing a virtual center for resources that's related to European Solidarity Corps. But anyway, youth NGOs were asking for it. So it would be a virtual center. They would have the tools and resources available, but there's still training and digital literacy required for that. But yeah, for me, the question related to who's doing what and who take the first step into that, it's still there and still the ownership. So who's doing it? Well, I was answering now from the researcher point of view, so I came back with more questions than the answers.
Thank you, Adina, very much. And maybe from the practice perspective, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't believe that youth work should put their effort to make new tools or platforms, because the thing is that we should adapt our youth work to these platforms that youngsters are using at the moment, because it's more easier to youngsters to attend, and we can more easily contact these youngsters when they know how to use this equipment or tech or this platform. And lost my thought there. So we have to know the youth culture inside those platforms and adapt our youth work to there. So it's not about building a platform, because if we are building a platform, we should build a new culture inside there, and we should have some greater value to use that than our maybe social media services or something like that. So it would be, for my point of view, it would be a waste of time, because we have the youngsters, we can reach them, and we just have to learn their culture and adapt our work to meet with them in the same level.
Thank you, Panu. Strong point there for the youth culture and actually not investing in new platforms. So I would be actually curious to know from the perspective of the European Commission, where there are certain things to consider, when it comes to the platforms that are being used at the moment, as we said, like data protection and the privacy and safety and so on. So what are the thoughts in the Commission about that, Babis?
Yeah. The point is really crucial, and it's an ongoing dialogue here in Brussels for what we're going to do. Imagine that in our level and in-house there are very strict regulations that we cannot use a lot of these commercial applications and programs that the most of the programs of the projects of the youth projects are using in their everyday life and the implementation of projects and meetings and whatever. So there are topics, and it's the topic of who is behind the big techs, even the fact that no one of them are from Europe, the metadata and what is going to happen when crucial information about persons involved in projects move in the commercial roads, but also other things that are connected with the technology and the way that we are understanding these platforms, because they are easy, friendly, and I don't know, advertised as the best solution. For the moment, yes, there are some initiatives that running around EU countries for the creation of European platforms for replacing the commercial ones. Yes, there are 2 or 3 initiatives that they are supported a lot by civil society organizations, especially those who are using data from youngsters belongs to crucial teams and groups like refugees, like people, young people that they are belonging to special groups, disadvantaged people, disabled people. So yeah, there are some special platforms, but again, I believe that we are far away from a decision or from the guideline to asking the civil society organizations or whoever is involved in the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps not to use the commercial platforms or to start building platforms, I don't know, here and there, or to create a central pan-European platform that it will change the map. So practically, I don't have something concrete on that, except the thing that we are collecting information and we know that there is a problem, and in some cases it's important. Of course, I can say that in some countries, in some member states, there are interesting developments and there are interesting platforms developed by academic, civil society, and tech people. I hope that in the next period it will be more accessible, more easy to find these platforms and to support them, and even one day to disconnect, let's say, from these big techs. And but it's up to the users, it's up to the people, it's up to the civil society, and we cannot force and we cannot say to the people, do this or do that or don't do this. It's not on our agenda, and we cannot push the people to go in one direction.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Babis. And Kadri, somehow Saltos and national agencies as well are often seen as kind of the bridge between the Commission and the grassroots youth work and back. And I also know that there are many projects also implemented that under the programs that produce maybe platforms on different initiatives and so on. So maybe from this medium level, what is the perspective there?
This topic is definitely something that I synergize very strongly with, because it has so many sides. I really agree with Panu on this, that it is very difficult to force people to use something else than where they already are, especially young people. And it's very difficult to create a tool that meets everyone's needs. So in case of youth worker practice, there are very different aims in each project, in each work. And to have one tool that solves them all, I think it is quite difficult to reach. So maybe the question is also about education, partly about does the user know and have a good overview about where their data is and what's their digital footprint. So that's one option to look into this. The more there is availability of this information, the easier is it for the user to make the choices on what to use. And the user in this case could be a youth worker. But on the other hand, it's also about the education about, let's say, digital literacy, because we see with our work, which we have done on digital transformation, we see that young people could be a leader in this transformation, not a follower. And if he or she is a leader, then the skill set is necessary to actually create their own tools and have the possibility to create their own tools. And yes, on the other side, I see that how young people or youth work or practice could be involved is this co-creation. When we create tools ourselves, because Saltos have tools that you can also use, like the training calendar or participation resource pool, or there's Salto Youth Web and Toy and so on. We see that in order to actually solve the needs of a user, a young person, we need to engage them in this building up the tool. So co-creation and participatory approach are really crucial. And when they are created for young people, the voices should be heard as well. And this could be done in so many ways, like co-steering groups or user interviews, brainstorming sessions, or actually taking over some things that the private sector or the big bad corporations are using. Like, for example, using hackathons, so young people could share their ideas and bring in these new ways of thinking, which maybe are actually giving back to the overall European Union. And maybe one last point is the key of the user experiences in every tool. I think that's maybe the main thing about building tools, is that if they are built, they should be very easy and very seamless. So in this way, it doesn't matter from where they come from. If user cannot, let's say, play around with them or understand them in first 15 seconds, then it's a high possibility that they lose interest. So it is a very a dangerous point for exclusion, because then only the ones who already know what to do are actually joining. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kari. And I think I could at least here feel that there is a lot of passion and expertise there regarding this topic, and a lot of knowledge as well. And I think we hear from the answers that actually, of course, the answer is not simple, and there are a lot of things to consider. And in fact, working groups that are following very shortly will be dealing with some of these aspects as well, to really provide reflection from different points of view on how can we ensure that the tools are adequate, that they are being used, that they are that there is privacy respect, that they are inclusive as well. Yeah, and I think this leads us, and we have very little time left, but I still want to ask each of you one more question, because it's not very often that you have such a resourceful group of people. So we tackled inclusion, I think, several times already in this conversation. So the question, Panu, now is, if we want to ensure inclusion of all the young people, yeah, that's always the dream, I think, in youth work and also in digital youth work, in these processes, so access to internet, access to tools, to equipment and so on, how can we ensure that, or as you say, baby steps, what are some of the first baby steps that we can make?
I don't think that there can be baby steps when talking about how to interact with everyone, but the first steps should be that we, all the services that we have digitalized past 20 years should be able to use with youngsters with learning disabilities or neurological problems or maybe loss of sight or hearing. So all the services should be checked that they are able to use for everyone. And the point where all the services are designed, they are always designed by someone who actually can use technology ways of 1% can use, and that makes a huge gap with the users that probably doesn't have the tech or the knowledge how to use them. So the highly intuitive user interfaces can actually be problematic to use if you don't have the some kind of competence to use these, or you don't have the background how to use these or implement to use. And what we can do is that we support youngsters to use these services and take them as like everyday civic rights that we are raising digital citizens and the citizenship, and the support for that is crucial. And other thing that isn't so baby steps is that internet is not a quality of life issue. It's more like a basic need to live your everyday life, and there should be steps to admit that okay, we need everyone needs internet daily basis, and we should promote that. And well, you should also raise the technology education as high as mathematics or languages or so forth, because if the youngsters doesn't know how the internet works, they don't know where their information is going or how it's used. So the crucial part is that everybody knows how the phone works or how it's coded and what is the information you are exchanging all the time.
Thank you, Panu. What I hear, and maybe that's not what you said, but I would like to think that you did, it's also this, I mean, you mentioned the education, but also the kind of the importance of civic education, but digital civic, and also to educate ourselves how to use it. And then those two together, I think, can make a really big difference. Maybe not baby steps, but at least something that needs to
It's the long way aim.
A lot of baby steps.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Adina, so also, I mean, from the research perspective, but I know that you can also wear multiple hats, is how can we ensure, so it's that there is digital youth work, but also participation of young people for all, so participation of all young people in also online, blended and hybrid learning mobilities, yeah? How can the research support, but also how can we ensure that in practice?
Well, I would have two answers. The short one would be that we can't. The second one, which would be the extended one, is that, well, not that we did some baby steps, but we did some steps. But as in the in-person, face-to-face activities, there we were at times saying that it's always the same suspects joining the activities. It's probably the same in the online world. It did open the access to groups that were underrepresented, but in the same time it closed the access to other groups. So yeah, we do speak of a very complicated youth ecosystem, if like that. You might have access to equipment, to internet, but you might have at home a very complicated situation. So anyway, you join, but your camera would be off. So we should probably understand a bit more this youth ecosystem before trying to understand how to ensure the access. But definitely, again, the dialogue between different stakeholders on ensuring this basic access is the first step. And then, yeah, there's nothing possible without training, because even having the equipment would not ensure the real participation of young people. Because, yeah, you might know how to access social media, but you're not able to pay taxes so online. So that's still the question, you know, to which extent are you able to really use internet in your life? And I do believe that we could still speak about that in a couple of years, but it does require a lot of training and, as Kadri was saying earlier, digital literacy of everyone, whether it's youth workers or civil servants or young people themselves especially, or teachers, because again, in Romania we have teachers who are really working on this, on making internet a resource in young people's lives, and youth workers do the same. So it comes with time and access and investment, of course.
Thank you. And I saw a lot of nodding also from all the other participants in this panel. And I would say also one thing that comes through in these 2 days already is really this need for systemic or more holistic, or whatever you would like, approach, and really considering different stakeholders. So when we talk about training, that so it's not just about young people, not about youth workers, but actually really kind of educating all the citizens on how to join this digital transformation. And speaking of the digital transformation, Kadri, what was the role of Salto P or PI, as we like to call it, in this process so far? And how do you think that what could be the future steps in supporting the digital transformation for all?
Yes, thank you. We started explore digital transformation about 1.5 years ago more intensely when the new program priority was announced. And when I started as a coordinator, then I realized that each individual has a very different understanding of what digital transformation is. We talk about tools, we talk about rights, we talk about a process change, transformation. So I think by now I have more than 200 answers on this question, which are all different. And what I decided was to start an advisory board on digital transformation that combined experts around Europe. In order to go deeper into this question, what is digital transformation, and to simplify it down, to tackle it in the EU youth field, how to understand it the best way, and what are the different areas and components of this. So we started to work from March, April last year, and next week is actually we will finalize this process. And during this time, we have had meetings to discuss overall what is digital transformation, and then break it into more pieces. How to look into, for example, if you have a project, then different ways. For example, what is the participatory approach, digital participation, or is there what is the part of the digital rights, etc. So this all we have combined together in participation research pool, and the process was led by Dr. Alicia Pavlochuk. And further on, we looked into different resources that are already available on the field, especially targeting youth workers and trainers on those different areas of digital transformation. And we have also combined them together, and they are available now probably from the end of April in the participation research pool. And further on, we started a more research part on how the digital transformation is currently described in the EU youth programs, and how it could be simplified so anyone who joins or who wants to start a project understand what it means. So this is currently ongoing. We have done focus group interviews with experts, with program officers, in order to understand what are the current main issues. And we have also done a mapping in the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps databases in order to learn from the past 5 years what is a digitally transformative project, and how can we actually tackle it. And for the future, from September, we have decided to start transnational cooperation project for youth workers and trainers to explore those different areas of digital transformation. And it is accompanied by panel sessions, because we saw a huge value also in cross-sectorial knowledge in this point, because there's so much things already done actually. So this will be about 6 panel sessions from September until April 2023 on the different areas of digital transformation. And maybe the last question about the how to ensure it for all, I completely see the same way that we have to start from asking who this tool or something is meant for, what kind of person it is, what are their needs, and how to approach them in the best way. So it is very, very difficult to ensure that everybody are involved in the same way, because even the interest is not there very often to be involved in the same way. And the mindsets are also changing in time. So this is a long process. And I see that what can be done most is to support the accessibility knowledge-wise and also equipment-wise, and consider the different needs, so everyone can actually access if they want to.
Thank you, Kadri, and thank you also for mentioning these concrete plans that are happening. We look forward to them. And speaking of the plans, Babis, we heard through the grapevine that there is another Salto in the making on digital transformation. So maybe just a really practical question for you. What are the steps happening there? When can we expect it? And what will be their role in the future so people also know what to expect in a way?
There are a lot of things that are prepared for the next period. The also in the Salto family, but also at the level of the national agencies. I must say from on that the next period will be really crucial, because returning back to the new normality, we have to face a lot of differences. So for us, for the European Commission, one crucial question is to update the manuals and the guidelines for the programs. Because as I say, until now, and this is how we are working, and practically these are the decisions, Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps are programs where participants meet physically. So this is the priority, this is how the program designed. And of course, you know that these programs designed back some years before the pandemic, and now we have to start thinking about the next phase. So for the preparations of the 2023 call of the programs, we will start to include more of these new threads and new, let's say, ways of understanding youth policy implementation. And the Commission is positive to start adapting the programs to the needs of the stakeholders. And if the stakeholders, and that means civil society organizations, young people, but also our networks, the national agencies and the Saltos, come to us with concrete proposals for how to build the new phase of the programs, we will be really happy. This is why the new Salto and the new initiatives of the Salto on digital are really crucial, because it will be a hub where all these informations will collect, and they will come to the level of the Commission more easy and more clear and filter that the information that we will collect from activities or papers, position papers coming to our level. I have the feeling that it will be an interesting period, the next phase of the implementation of both Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps, and thanks to these initiatives, we will be more ready to reply to the needs of the young people and youth civil society actors.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We definitely look forward to Salto, and we are sure that it will be doing the excellent job that the other parts of the network are already doing. And I think what I hear from the answers is really two main things, and one is to really simplify that sometimes is used as a pejorative word, but in a way to really translate the information, to make it accessible for everyone, and then also build the competences and capacities of everyone involved for that. Also, right in this last minute, to bring you two voices from the YouTube who were actually, we had viewers who were commenting, and then one voice says, all the services should be designed and tested and evaluated with young people. So we talked about having them involved in needs, but also in testing and evaluating. And the young people need also digital support, how to use digital services targeted to them. They can be peers to other young people. Yeah? So we also talk about the peer learning among young people. And another voice, which is from Juha, who cannot refrain himself from participating even when he is not in the room, that says access to digital technology should definitely be defined as a basic need, while ensuring the competences at the same time. And we feel that this really complements in that sense. And with this, I would really like to thank you, Babis, Kadri, Adina, and Panu, for being with us today and really sharing a lot of valuable and insightful thoughts. Again, we are very grateful for that. And now we are going to pass on to our facilitators and the groups to process this and also come up with some of their thoughts on their own. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the digital future, but also in presence, if possible. Thank you very much. And now we look to the left and hello, and pass the mic to Antti, who is eagerly waiting to tell you what happens next. Antti.
Eagerly waiting, indeed. Yes, well, Susanna said it already, our participants will be going with their baby steps to the warm hug named Domagoj in Zoom, and share their thoughts on the questions now discussed on the panel. For the viewers on YouTube, thank you for the comments and thank you for watching. Just to say already about tomorrow, which will be the final day of our State of Play seminar, you can see the program here. And it's all about digesting the information coming from today and from yesterday. And we have the privilege to sit down for the evening and for probably for the best part of the night, together with some observers and the work package leads here, to see really that what is the impact that all these outcomes can cause now for the LTA, for the digital transformation, for digital youth work in general, so for the morning we'll be analyzing a bit that, as well as then giving and throwing the ball back to the LTA work packages, so the long-term activity leads, asking the questions as what are you going to do about it? But as said, thank you again for the viewers on YouTube, and we'll ask you the participants then to join Domagoj in Zoom, who will lead you to your working groups for a final reflection for today for about half an hour. Okay?